Hi everyone, this is Michael with the Central Kansas Library System. As many of you know, we do have a Koha upgrade coming soon here at the end of June 2023, and there are going to be a lot of changes, but the major change that most of you are going to notice is that the staff client or the staff catalog is going to be completely redesigned. Most of the things will be in the same place, with a few exceptions, but it will look quite a bit different, and so I wanted to give you all a sneak peek just so that there's not as many surprises on the day of the upgrade. The first part of this video, I'm going to show you basically some basic things in the staff catalog, the new one. And then the second half of the video, I'm going to show you a side-by-side comparison of what things look like now and what they're going to look like in the upgrade so that you can kind of see some of the differences. Okay, let's take a look. This here is the main page or the home screen of the new updated Patron catalog with the new look. You can see it's got a theme of green and gray, and the only difference when we actually go live with the update is that you aren't going to see this purple bluish background that says Bywater Test Server, but everything else will look about the same. As you can see, instead of having buttons up here for checking out and checking in and things like that, we've got one line that goes across the top, and you just select one of these different options. We could see that each of these options also has an icon next to it now that kind of tells you sort of a visual representation of what each of these things does. And then when you click on one of them to select it, over here on the left, next to the bar, we also get a description of what we're doing. We still have this top bar with the different links that we've set up for our Koha in Pathfinder Central. And so those links aren't changing, although they do look slightly different. One big thing is there used to be a big Koha logo over here that you would click to go back to home. And right now it's much, much smaller. And so you can see it's just this small green icon here. There's also a green home button below it, but clicking on either one of those will take you to the home screen no matter where you're at. All of these main icons here in the middle have not changed. They're gray now instead of white buttons, but the text hasn't changed at all. So those are still going to be the same. And if you scroll down a bit, the links for the annual reports and things like that are all in the same place they were before. One major change that most of you are going to notice almost immediately is if we go here to search catalog, we don't have immediately the options to select what kind of search we're doing, whether it's a keyword or title search. And we also don't have the option to select which library we want to search right off the bat. Those are things that you've been used to in the old catalog. If we want to see those options, there's this little slider icon right here. And if we click on that, it opens up the options to select the type of search we want to run and which library we want to run it for. If we don't select this and change any of these options, by default, if we do a catalog search, it's going to search by a keyword and it's going to search all the libraries. There is potentially something we can do to make this a little bit more like the way it used to be with the drop downs here immediately, but it also causes some problems, and I'm going to show you a little bit how that works at the end of the video. If I do run a search here, we can see that the search results look very similar to what we've seen in the current catalog, but you will notice that there is a bright yellow theme here for some things as well. And if we can start scrolling through, we see that the options, all of the options to place holds, all of that are going to be the same as what we have now. Again, it just looks a little bit different. And we do still have the option to show or hide local items, just like we had in the old collection. Off to the left, one thing that you might notice is that with this color scheme, the green on a gray, it's actually a little bit harder to read than it was before. And I have found a way to bump up the text size, so this is a bit larger than default, and that has helped somewhat. But if you're still having trouble reading some of these things, let me know. And there are some other things we can try to customize the look to make it a bit better. Now, if we want to take a look at a Patron account, this is once again going to look very similar to what we have now, other than the colors. the things are still in the same place. You'll notice that these options up here along the top are not quite as bold. They don't stand out quite as much as they do on the old catalog with the buttons, but things are still in the same place. In order to show you a few more of the other changes, I want to give you a side-by-side split screen look at the new versus the old design. And so let's take a look at that. Okay, here is the new versus the old catalogs. We can see that things are for the most part in the same place on the home screen. It just looks different colors. But of course, this bar at the top here has changed quite a bit. Again, if we click through any of these options, all that's changing is this label over here, and this bar stays the same. Meanwhile, if we look at the catalog the way it is now, if you click through these, the bar stays here, but this highlighting and this label changes as well. And of course, if you go to search the catalog, we do have the keyword selection over here and the all libraries selection over here. Whereas in the new catalog, if we go to search the catalog, you have to click this to get those options. Also, I do want to emphasize, if you can see in the old design, we have a big Koha logo that we can click on to go home. And that's something that a lot of you use oftentimes to get places quickly. Now that is a very small icon. It's a little green thing up here, and I've already enlarged it a little bit, so it's bigger than it was originally. And it's still a bit hard to see and not quite as easy to click on. Okay, here we're taking a look at a Patron account in the new versus the old design. One of the things that you'll notice that is nice about the new design is it takes up less space at the top of the screen, so there's more space to see what you're actually looking for. You might also notice that these buttons, the edit, add guarantee, change password, etc., those are not as obvious as they were in the old catalog where they these big prominent buttons. They are still there, they're just not quite as obvious. If we take a look at the checkouts, those are going to look very similar. The tables themselves haven't really changed. And so those things are going to be where you expect them to be. When we do a search, we can see, once again, everything is in the same place it was before. You'll notice the sidebar, this green on gray is a little bit harder to read, opposed to this blue on white. But I have bumped up the text size, and so hopefully that shouldn't be any more difficult to read than this was in the current design. If we scroll through, we can see that the way the text is presented is mostly the same. However, since the text size has been bumped up a bit, some of these details are actually a bit easier to read. One final thing I want to show you on this split screen is that some of the tools have moved. And so it used to be, if you wanted to go to work on batch item modification and modifying things in the catalog, you would go to tools. And when you go to tools, there you've got lots and lots of options, and you would just have to find under all this big list, batch item deletion, batch item modification, batch record deletion, and so on. If we go in the new design catalog under tools, we can see there's not nearly as many tools here. So you're not going to find everything under this tools heading anymore. What we actually need to do is go back home and go under the cataloging module here. And here is where we're going to find most of those cataloging tools. So we've got our batch editing tools all together here. And we've got other tools such as labels, barcodes, and spine label things here. So that's one big thing you'll notice. In fact, if you compare that to the cataloging module in the old design, there's almost nothing under cataloging. So they've really beefed up the cataloging side and put things here that deserve to be under cataloging. One final thing I want to show you as a side-by-side here is the comparison of the new redesigned catalog, both before and after I put in a few small design tweaks. As I was looking through and working in the new catalog, I realized that it was not quite as readable as I liked. Some of the things were a little bit harder to read. And so I made some changes to hopefully make it a bit easier for all of us as we're working in it. You'll notice the bottom here is after the changes. I made some of the text bold, so here in the header, and these buttons are bold text, and I also slightly increased the size of the text and these home icons over here to make things a bit easier to find. Here, when we do a search, we can see originally the green on gray, especially with this small font size, is pretty difficult to read. And so I have updated that size so it's larger and hopefully quite a bit easier to read. And the final thing I want to show you here is a comparison of the search, the catalog options here. We can potentially go back to having the drop-downs immediately rather than having to click this button right here. So we could have the all libraries and the keyword search immediately showing. But as you can see, the problem with that is that it makes this search keywords bar very, very small. There's not a lot of room to put in much of a search, and it starts to feel really cramped. And so that's why we haven't included that in this redesign at this point. However, if you decide that you would really rather have the drop down there immediately rather than clicking to get those drop down options, that is potentially an option we could make. Okay, I know that's a lot to digest. One of the reasons I showed you all of those changes that I've made at the end of the video is because I want you to know the catalog is very customizable. Things like making font bigger, changing the weight, all of that is very customizable. So if you're having trouble reading something, if you're having trouble finding something, please let me know. Someone else is probably having the same problem, and there is potentially a lot we can do to make that transition easier and to make the catalog look and feel and function the way that you need it to as a librarian on the front lines working with your patrons. I know the change is kind of a big one. Even though things are in the same place, it looks a lot different. But I want you to know I believe in you. We've been through big changes before. There are definitely going to be some hiccups. That comes with every upgrade, and this one has over 800 changes, and so there's going to be a lot of things. Most of them you won't notice, but there will be some hiccups. But you know what? We keep going. Things get better as we go, and we are gonna knock it out of the park. So look forward to the upgrade, and let me know if you have any questions, any concerns, and I will see you next time.